Boom! According to that, I am live. No, Quentin Rankin, this was not a social experiment to see what you would all do if I wasn't here. This was Streamlabs OBS, and they're not allowed to call themselves that anymore. Saying that they... there's a distracting shadow there. I wonder what that's being caused by. Anyway, yeah, there's a Streamlabs OBS, wanted to reinstall, and it got stuck, and then it wouldn't let me reboot, and, you know, technical stuff. It's a feature, not a bug. We get that every week. Which is funny because part of one thing I wanted to show you all just as I kicked off this week was I actually have now two alternate camera solutions, both of which are pretty good, one of which I tried last week and didn't quite come out right, and I just wanted to show you and see which one you think looks best. So this is the normal one that I use every week. This is the Logitech C920, or C922, which is like the sort of standard webcam that streamers use. Let me show you this one. This is the iPhone, and it's just using an iPhone adapter. And yeah, you can see me there. I think this one looks pretty clean. The stand I've got to adjust a little bit, but you can see me there. Yeah, that's using the iPhone camera anyway. I think that looks quite good actually. I don't know. That's the iPhone camera. I can probably zoom that in a little bit. You can see all of me here. I mean, you know, it's a little bit different. Oh, by the way, I'll come to this later. This is an Anton Petrov channel t-shirt. Just wanted to support the guy. He makes great videos just about space and science, like almost daily, actually. So, yeah, this is the iPhone camera. And I also got the GH3 going, finally. Hopefully the power won't drop out this time. I think I've got that fixed too. And that's here. This is the GH3 camera. So this is my really good camera, yeah, obviously the three look pretty different, but I'm curious which one you think I should stick with. This should be the best one. This is a proper, you know, proper camera with a huge sensor on it. That said, the iPhone one is made to look like, you know, obviously it looks like I've got makeup on, but you know, in that sense, it also makes me look a little bit healthier, perhaps. The colors look great, of course, on the iPhone. I actually really do like the colors on this, even though it's obviously not as high resolution. And this is the C920 that I always use. And I don't know, rank it, everybody, in the comments. What do you think, the Logitech iPhone or GH3? The iPhone one, for what it's worth, is probably the easiest. And most stable, and I do think I'm probably going to get rid of the USB connection, or get rid of the webcam after this, because it is just so much better. Just out of interest, I might just do some on the fly. What could go wrong? I'll see if I can make it the same sort of proportion, whoops, as the webcam, just to make it a fair fight, just that you can see it in the same sort of resolution. Oops. Let me do this, and oops, and this. But I think it is higher resolution anyway. Boom, 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 boom. I mean, I think it easily beats out the webcam. For what it's worth. Oh, now I'm moving everything around this one. I think it easily beats the Logitech, right? I mean, whoops. If I flip between these, the color's obviously better. So that's one thing. But this is like a studio camera. I mean, this is actually sharper. I probably should zoom out a little bit, but yeah. I don't know. I look very red on the iPhone one. I think that's what the iPhone thing does. It plays with the saturation. It's midwinter, and I'm a very pale person, so this is sort of true color. I think the GH3 looks the best myself. It's just getting the connection and the capture stable. But I'll take a impromptu vote. Definitely GH3 or iPhone, right? Yeah. So I think I'm going to get rid of the webcam. I don't think I need it anymore with this, which is cool. Any thoughts on comparison between GH3 or the iPhone? This looks a little bit like what Apple does. It tries to make people look like they've got makeup on, which I appreciate. My eyes look blue. All the colors pop actually quite nicely on the iPhone one, but it's obviously false. Which is better, unsalted butter or salted butter? Day and age, there's no question salted butter. I mean, what's the point? If you're having it's having unsalted butter. Like, what's your objective of eating butter? To live longer? No, it's to enjoy butter. You got to have salt in it. Easy question, almost a trick question. Quentin Rankin thinks the GH3 is better. I tend to as well. Although this is a great, this is obviously just for all of you out there. This is a free app. You can install this on a Mac or a PC. It's called Camo. It's actually got a watermark down the bottom, but as you can see, I can easily crop it out. This turns your iPhone, if you have an iPhone or even an Android camera, you can see how much better it is than a top of the line. This is a top of the line USB webcam. Sorry, this is already turning into a tech review to start out with, especially on a show with tech issues in the beginning. But you can clearly see this is like, incomparably better than the best USB webcams you can get out there. So if you ever want to do live streaming and you don't want to pay for a GH3 and an HDMI connection, I endorse Camo. They do charge a ton for the pro version of it, but you don't need it. You can see how good it is. But that said, iPhone is more beauty shot, which I may or may not require. I think GH3. Obviously, if this was a beauty channel, I'd have more subscribers or less subscribers. Let's face it. No, let's be real. If this was a beauty channel, I would probably have like 2 subscribers, and they would both be members of my family. Anyway, that's a thing. I'm gonna leave it on GH3 in that case. So, the iPhone one is interesting. It's a pretty cool tool, but yes, indeed. Let's say hello to the people who are in the comments. I am late, so I will race through the topics tonight. But DJ Sunny Side Up first, indeed. Good to have you in here. Let's just make sure I see it's on top chat. I don't know why it defaults to top chat. I want to see all the chat, and I worry it's gonna make it different. Oh, you know what? It's cut off some of the earlier comments from that. So yes, Odie Jr., technical issues are a feature. So I saw that DJ Sunny Side Up was indeed first, but I think the summarized comments, just to make sure, it was over summarizing there. So boom, live chat. Please do say hello now, just to make sure you're not being cropped out of the stuff above. I think I saw Ben Duncan was in there. Good to see you, Ben Duncan. Backup, good to see you, Backup. Been marveling at the nice thumbnail. I don't recognize the handle name, by the way. Backup, but good to have you in here. We've got Kerberos Tenshi. Aaron, excellent to see you. Was just watching a video about giant squid captured on camera. I was just watching a video about giant squid captured on camera. I wonder if we were watching the same video. Maybe we followed the same streams. But yes, just off America, where they had the LED, and it turned out that it was it was very smart. It rushed up and thought it was a jellyfish and then changed its mind. That one, right? I wonder if that was the same one that you saw. Anyway, Aaron, good to see you. Good morning. We've got Quentin Rankin, great to see you as always. Kerberos Tenshi, I already said hello to Mr. Corby. Mr. Cordy Chap, great to see you. Sergeant Bilko. Who else we got in here? Scrolling down, trying not to miss anybody, but trying to go down quickly. We've got Barry Convex. Have we started? The party has started now. One Johnson, boom, boom, boom. Yes, indeed. Ben Duncan down here. Gene, good to see you, Gene. We've got Tai Nakamura, good to see you, sir. We've got Jitha Chan, nice to see you. The iPhone look is indeed pretty good. I might go back to it. We'll see. If the GH3 craps out, which it might, I'll go back. This is just wonderfully sharp. The other thing is that if I made this full screen, it would look like better than this is a studio camera basically now. I've had this camera all along and I've never got it working like this. That's a whole separate thing. I found like a $10 HDMI USB adapter which got this to work after having failed at that for many years actually. I've got like a $200 Blackmagic deck link that I couldn't get to work properly. I've got an Elgato cam link 4K, and that never got that to work properly with my camera. And now I have this wonderful $10 Chinese thing from Amazon. Had good reviews. I tried it out, and it's just low spec. It's just 1080p, not trying to be 4K, 30 frames per second, all that you need for streaming. It's solid. It works. I love this. Anyway, we've got, who else we got in here? We got GH3 indeed, people saying. Dan H, good to see you as always, of course. Joe Smith, very red indeed here. Maybe good, maybe not so good. There seems to be consensus that the GH3 is better. I think so too. We've got Tyrone's Kitchen, good evening indeed. Tawaiwai, good to see you. GH3 is definitely better. Atomic Tong, good to see you, and good to see the opinions on salted butter here. Ben Duncan also commenting that the colors are definitely more accurate on the GH3. I mean, that's what you get it for. It kind of shows, in fact, the iPhone is an AI chip enhanced camera. But yeah, why unsalted butter is more versatile. If you can't salt your own food, go home. Well, that's an interesting perspective. I suppose that's technically correct. I don't know. I just see it as, people going for it as like a health thing. But Sadiq, good to see you, Sadiq. Welcome. Glad you could join us this morning where you are. We've got Ada Void again. Great to see you. I'm sure I said something hilarious. I can't remember anymore. And we are caught up. Remember, if you want to get my attention, do what Sergeant Bilko did. Say my name. You don't even have to put an @ mark. It'll flash orange after each story. I will flash back and see who said something and respond. Got Eric Bailey in there, by the way. Great to see you. I feel better now. Thank you. Yeah, it's been an interesting week, an interesting day. Iraq 299, excellent to see you. Nice to see I've sorted my technical issues out. Well, they're never fully sorted out, but yes, one step backwards and 2 steps forwards, I'd like to think. You see, it's a slightly better video now. First thing I just mentioned before, let me show you the shirt. Hello, wonderful people. It's like the catchphrase. I quite like it for Anton Petrov. He has a wonderful YouTube channel. I do enjoy when I'm watching YouTube just for my own stuff. I do like watching science channels and news channels. And he's got a great channel. He's like a school teacher from Canada who, just features like interesting science papers going on, space and science papers like almost every day. And he's very good at explaining them, and it's really great. And I wanted to support the channel, and so I got a t-shirt, and it's quite dig the t-shirt. It's got the Mars helicopter thing on it, and yeah, I quite like that. I also like the catchphrase, hello wonderful people. I won't steal it, but it is quite a good one. What else is going on? I mean, the current situation, I guess I should give you the latest in Japan in terms of COVID. I'll talk a little bit about this as well in the topics, but we're now hitting steadily over 4,000. It's going up, like basically doubling every 2 days here in Tokyo. So, while the numbers are still a lot lower than in Europe and the United States and so on, where, you get 10 times the cases, the curve is heading in that direction, and it's not clear if or when it's going to slow down. So, it is quite alarming. Obviously, Omicron, like everywhere else, much fewer serious cases than before, although there is a lag for the serious cases, so they will probably go up. Other big serious cases that, the spread has been so rapid, it's hit things like hospitals all at once, where hospital staff are either catching it or being close contacts with it, and they are, particularly in prefectures like Okinawa that are hardest hit, they are finding now that hospitals are having to shut down because they have so many staff unable to show up for work because they've been exposed to it, and they have to protect their patients, of course. So in that sense, it is causing serious issues for the medical system. Also big problems for the national university entrance exams that are happening right now, including one news story I didn't include in the topics, but and I don't like to talk about crime news, but I found it particularly annoying, infuriating, I would say. There was a story about a 17-year-old, second year of high school, so not final year, not taking the exams, but a kid who apparently, 17 years old, so legally a kid in Japan, and there's no exceptions. You know how in America, how if they really piss someone off, they'll treat a 12-year-old as an adult? No exceptions in Japan. If you're under 18, you are a kid, no matter how bad you are, including some famous cases like the Hasejun case in the 1990s, a kid who again was 17 years old, I think, and decapitated. In fact, back then the age was 20, so I think he was like 19, and he decapitated a small child. Did something, horrific crime, and still was basically put into a boys' home and changed his name and went out in the world when he turned 20. And that's what's going to happen in this case. But this kid, unfortunately, there have been all of these cases, these horrible crime stories in Japan over the last couple of, I guess a year now, where we've had the train attacks where people have tried to set fires on the trains and going on stabbing sprees. We had the Kyoto animation attack and this, Osaka mental health clinic attack with fire bombings. And again, this kid from Nagoya seemed to be inspired by this Joker character. Bought a ticket to Tokyo from Nagoya, showed up, had 3 liters of gasoline on him, which he poured out on a train and tried to set on fire. Then he lit 8 fires inside a train station. Then he left the train station and went to he actually went to Tokyo University, which was just acting as a test site for regular kids. There's no Tokyo University entrance exam. This was just a normal testing site for kids who live in the neighborhood where the university is. And he just went and randomly stabbed two school students on their way to take university entrance exams and a 72-year-old passerby at the gate of Tordai. And why? Because he says he wanted to die, which is stupid because he's a kid. He's not going to get the death penalty for it, even if he succeeded. Just grabbing attention. And, this is, again, why all these people are traveling to Tokyo to do this. And I find that very, very... I saw some people being sympathetic to the kid who did it. And I'm sympathetic to the kid until he sets the train on fire and stabs 3 people. And then I'm not sympathetic. I mean... everybody has trouble with the education system and everyone has stress, but not everybody goes around stabbing people and setting trains on fire. So, no, I'm not sorry for him at all. And I think he's very, very lucky. And I suspect that he knew as a 17-year-old he was going to get off scot-free for it and wanted to try it on. So that happened in, I don't disclose where I live, but that was close enough to could have affected me or members of my family. So particularly... aggravated by that news anyway. So that was a big story that happened yesterday. Of course, I'll talk a little bit about the tsunami, of course, today. In fact, I think it might be the very first story that I've got on here. So a lot going on in the world at the moment. Any big butter news today, asked Aaron? I have no big butter news today, fortunately. Just thinking, it turns out the milk crisis was averted when the government asked everybody to drink milk. Everybody, it's an emergency, drink milk, and everyone did. I still have my opinions that the Japan agricultural collective system just doesn't work with dairy. I think, by the way, I did have a thought. I was watching some shows that were sponsored by JA, featuring how Japanese farming. And I must admit, I was thinking about this. Japan, I think Japan has undoubtedly, indisputably, Japan has the best vegetables and fruit in the world. If you take the average supermarket and the quality of fresh fruit and vegetables, the only way you could do better, obviously, is being somewhere where it's all actually fresh from local markets. But if you talk about like in a major city that actually relies on distribution channels, Japan does have the best quality food in the world. It's just you pay through the nose for it. But I'm actually happy to pay a lot for the quality of food that I get from most Japanese farmers. It's just butter. It's not working. Dairy products, it's never worked, and it would benefit, and we would be better off if they had international free trade on it, and we don't. So we all have to chug milk uncontrollably sometimes, and we have to queue up for ration butter sticks sometimes, and that's stupid, but that is what that is. So Kobayashi Tenchi, you like going to the university, Tokyo University campus, just have a stroll. It's a nice place to walk indeed. And there are 2 campuses, and actually I live kind of near to the one where the attack was now, and I used to live right beside the campus for the 3rd and 4th year students, which was also great. In fact, no, I think it's the other way around. I used to live near the 1st and 2nd year students campus, which is in Komaba Todaimai. That was a great neighborhood as well. But of course, completely irrelevant to Tordai. This is the thing. I mean, this person is just an idiot on top of being a very bad person. But anyway, into the stories. The first one, of course, we had this volcanic eruption, calderic eruption. So, because of the volcano is in the water, it made it particularly explosive in Tonga. Being from New Zealand, I mean, Tonga is actually maintained relative independence compared to countries like Samoa and Fiji and so on, which have come under direct New Zealand administration for a long time. But New Zealand does kind of consider this part of the world its backyard. And growing up, in my class at school, we had a lot of Tongan kids and Samoan kids and so on. And, there's a lot of strong connections with New Zealand. So, this one feels kind of close to home, this explosion that happened. I mean, for a start, there was a video on the internet, which I don't have in the comments here, showing the same scale of map of this explosion and like the Kanto region. And that explosion is like basically as big as like most of Honshu. The speed at which the explosion happened and the size of it, I mean, it's crazy. People still trying to figure out the size of it in terms of the amount of sulfur and ash released, and it looks like it wasn't as big as for example, the Mount Pinatubo eruption in the 1990s in Philippines. But at the same time, we don't know if it's over or not. Of course, it created a shockwave that you could see on the satellite photos. and that was felt in Japan and so on. And the noise, even in Fiji and New Zealand, thousands of kilometers away, you could hear this huge noise. You can see videos of that. So crazy. It did result in a tsunami warning, which actually they got wrong. It turns out, well, two things went wrong with the tsunami warnings. The first thing, Japan has, of course, a fantastic tsunami warning system where they have all these buoys out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, which monitor changes in sea level and so on. But in a case like this, where you've got a really fast traveling, virtually a shockwave tsunami, they had to basically estimate based on previous similar incidents, what would happen with this. And they estimated that a tsunami of about 0.5 meter would arrive at about 7 p.m. This evening. It turned out a tsunami of 1.5 meters arrived in Japan at like 11 o'clock in the morning. It arrived much, much faster than anyone was expecting. And that was crazy. The tsunamis that arrived, fortunately no loss of life or damage. It seems not even confirmed in Tonga yet, which would be kind of a miracle if that's the case, but it does appear that the explosion and the ash has caused power outages, phone outages, internet lines have been cut through the Pacific, so a lot of disruption there. Also, it sounds like the water and the ash has contaminated the water supply in Tonga, so pretty urgent needs for international help for Tonga to make sure they have water and relief from this, which I hope. Again, New Zealand kind of taking the lead on that, but I hope a lot of other countries chip in to help with that. But also out here in Japan, the effect was, we had a lot of towns where ships, moored boats capsized and sank when they were hit by this very fast-moving wave. Remembering that, everyone thinks a tsunami at 60 centimeters or 1 meter isn't very, it's just a little wave. But it's not a normal wave. It's not a wave like this that moves across the ocean. It's the entire sea elevating. The force is not the force of a wave like a meter wide. It's a wave that's like 10 kilometers wide. It's basically the whole ocean lifting up at that point. And in the case of this one, traveling at like hundreds of kilometers per hour. So, enough to flip boats over, even if it wasn't very high. And we don't know that it's not over. So, the first thing is the Met Office in Japan was explaining why they got it wrong, and everyone was saying, no, this is kind of without precedent. It's never in the modern age has there been a tracked sort of explosive calderic explosion like this before that's caused a tsunami. This is probably a small version of like what happened in Santorini in the Mediterranean that ended the Bronze Age, basically. Also not unlike Krakatoa, of course, very similar situation of an explosion happening like half in the water. The other thing that, of course, happened is if you're living in Yokohama or Kanagawa, apparently the warning alert system that sends out really noisy alerts to phones to wake you up if there's a big earthquake or a tsunami coming, apparently there was a bug, and apparently 15 towns in Kanagawa, instead of getting one warning, got 600 warnings. Apparently nobody got sleep. And remember that today was the university entrance exam, so a lot of the poor kids who were in Yokohama basically weren't allowed to sleep all night because the phones kept screaming, kept putting sirens on 600 times all evening. So that was a bit of a disaster as well, and they've said they found it was a setting error and they've fixed it. But big impacts here, of course. Concerned about New Zealand, very, very much concerned about Tonga. And not just Tonga, actually, but Fiji and Niue and nearby Pacific Islands, of course, also likely to be really impacted by this. So, obviously, hoping that everything is okay with them. Still not a lot of information with so much communication lines being cut, but hoping that help gets to them soon. My sound sync. People talking about the sound sync. In fact, I wondered, did I leave the settings on here with a slight delay, which maybe I don't need. I don't know. I'll play around with that later, but it looks like my voice is in sync for most people. So anyway, that is the first story. Into the comments. Kohai, good to see you, Kohai. And indeed, New Zealand will help, but New Zealand doesn't have a lot of resources. I'm hoping Australia will help out with that as well. It would be very nice for Japan to do that. There are apparently 35 people from Japan in Tonga, not a lot of people, but there again, it is the Pacific, so I hope that they do something to help. and no particular comments there. So, oh, John Anderson, greetings from London. Good to see you, John Anderson. And g'day indeed from Black Tengu. Good to see you. Justin Connolly, also good to see you. And indeed, I do hope, like you, that Tonga is okay from this and that they get all the help that they need. Just a nice tweet. This from Epi. Oops. Do not want to do that. I don't know if I can make this larger. You can see down the bottom there, in the bottom left, just a nice mention from Epi. I don't know if she's actually, I shouldn't presume. I think from the avatar, I'm assuming it's a she. Could be a he. I don't know if you're in the comments right now, Epi, but thank you for the very nice tweet. I do appreciate it. I don't know if I have this effect for other people, but I'm glad that you appreciate a grown-up gaijin with a non-YouTube job. I don't know that many, even like really successful YouTubers. I don't know if they actually have YouTube jobs, but yes, the digital equivalent to hanging out, listening to the old crazy old person talking away in the pub. Happy to play that role. Good to see you, Magpie 882. The next story, I haven't weighed a lot into this, but I will talk about this. An ongoing problem, of course, is the dilemma for people who have visas for entering Japanese universities or Japanese schools, or indeed coming for jobs in Japan, but I think particularly for students in different ways. And the uncertainty that they've been told, just wait just a little bit longer, basically for 2 years now, going into the third year. And a lot of, while it is frustrating, and I have co-workers who are in the situation who've been waiting for 2 years to come in with their families and have visas and everything, and they're just waiting to be allowed into the country, and they're not allowed in. The family separations, there are many aspects of this, and this isn't just Japan, of course. And I'm sympathetic to Japan's situation that, of course, it's not really up to Japan what happens with the pandemic. They're just waiting for things to get well enough to let people in. They're doing what most countries are doing. They're limiting immigration to try to minimize, to try somehow to control or minimize the spread of the pandemic. And I get all of that. But at the same time, particularly for students thinking about the way that the academic year works, being told, hold on for a couple of months, when the school year is fixed, and we're talking about April for the new academic year, the colleges themselves are complaining that they are losing students, which are important income, of course, for the universities. But more than that, you think about the welfare for the students, apart from the fact that they are, for a job, you're getting paid, but for the university, you are paying, and you're delaying a year of your life if you've committed all into going to a Japanese university, for example, and the government is not letting you go in to attend your classes. And we're facing going into a third year of this now. And I do think that while I don't, I realize it's not as easy as just throwing the floodgates open, and there are hundreds of thousands of people waiting to come into the country at the moment, and they'll all have to go through quarantine, which means that even if it suddenly does go well. 1 minute, I'm just going to adjust that light. Just had a light go out. Boom. Even if the government suddenly does let people into the country, it's going to take a long time to get them all in. And in the end of the day, it sort of is up to the external factor of how the pandemic's going. However, at the same time, the government kind of being vague and telling people to hold on to hope for 3 years. And even that, they're doing this again now, that they think, okay, maybe we might ease it to let people in soon. But they're not offering any criteria for doing it, besides the fact that the whole idea of the immigration ban at the moment is to stop Omicron coming into the country. But that horse is bolted because tens of thousands of US troops were found getting in through a loophole without any testing, and were basically bringing it into the country and have spread it extensively in Okinawa, Hiroshima, and Yamaguchi. And separate to that, in Tokyo, Japanese people have brought it in through immigration, obviously, and it's already spreading through the community. So in the end of the day, the objective of the blanket ban on immigration, of keeping Omicron out of the country, is gone. Japanese people can come in with quarantine. So, I don't understand. There's no real functional purpose other than the political benefit of being seen to be doing something. And obviously it'll make people uncomfortable to hear that, the government's letting foreigners in when, the pandemic's out of control. But rationally, it doesn't really make a difference at this point. The purpose of the immigration ban is no longer makes any sense. So you do have to question what's the criteria that the government's using to, one, justify the a continuing ban and not allow people to start coming in, and two, what's the criteria that they're going to lift this? And just saying vaguely that, yeah, we're still considering and we think we're going to make it better soon in a couple of increments, when you've got a student who's been putting off their first year of university or their third year of university for like 2 years, and they're facing the dilemma of whether to do it for a third year, and they've only got a month to decide, and the Japanese government, instead of saying, okay, everybody, sorry, we're not going to open up the country, you should make different plans, or saying, we are going to let everybody in and this is how, or they say, these are the criteria. If COVID cases get below 2,000 cases a day, we will let you in, and until then we won't. If they offered clear criteria, either a blanket no, or a conditional yes with clear criteria, or a blanket yes, that's fine, but they're not doing any of those things. They're just saying, yeah, we're still thinking about it, we don't know what to do yet, and just hold on and we'll think about it some more. They've been saying that for nearly, for going into a third year now. They're going past 2 years on this. So for all the people waiting, but particularly for the students, who that threshold throws off an entire year, I do feel really bad for them at this point. Yeah, I think that Japan is handling this worse than other countries that are at least being more transparent about their criteria for doing this. I mean, other countries, of course, have similar sort of restrictions and similar dilemmas for international students. But this is actually, I haven't been on the bandwagon of people saying, that let me in the country, or this is making you look really bad, Japan. I haven't been on that bandwagon that's been there for 2 years and has been very loud. But at this point, it doesn't make, where it clearly doesn't make any logical sense anymore. It really doesn't. I actually think, this is really actually now damaging Japan. And I worry that it's damaging Japan for the sake of, political ratings and fear of public backlash for doing the right thing, which would be inconsistent with what Japan's done on immigration, where they've very quietly loosened it over the last couple of years. So I really, really hope that the government sort of starts to realize the damage that's happening. And for what it's worth, there are a lot of industry groups now are starting to speak out and say this, like Japanese groups, not just foreign groups. And the media is covering it as well. So, there's hope, but it's moving so slowly, and we're hitting such a critical time period. I really think that this is actually now being done, for all the criticisms I had of Suga. I think if Kishida just lets this one sit vaguely for like more than 2 more months, I'd say he's handling it worse than Suga, so we'll see. Although he's polling much, much better, of course. But anyway, that's my view on that. I don't see any comments, so I'm going to jump on to the next one. Indeed, Aaron, they take 5 years to make a freaking decision. That is true. Slake Manson, North Carolina, snowy North Carolina. Good to have you from snowy North Carolina with us. Next one, and here's the irony. While this is happening, the government is officially trying to target attracting 50,000 skilled Asian professionals in a talent war. Japan sees itself in a competition for talented IT professionals from countries like Vietnam and India to come to Japan, and it's competing with countries like Taiwan and South Korea and America and so on. And it's made this target that it's going to try to, because of the shortage in skilled IT engineers in Japan that it needs. It's targeting 50,000 overseas sort of Asian IT professionals and other highly skilled professionals at the same time as we have that story where the government is still going into its third year of banning everyone from coming in the country. So I don't see how this is going to work exactly. And indeed, just for an idea of how desperate the situation is, in a country where the standard first year graduate from first year having been a graduate from university getting into a good paying job in a Japanese company, wages are the same as they were when I got here. My starting wage was 5.5 million yen, which is about just under $50,000 US. And that was a better than average wage at the time. It still is. I think the average wage in Japan is now below that. But that's in a good IT company, you'd be looking at about $40,000 to $45,000 in your first year. The best paid ones, in fact, at most companies in Japan, execs get paid probably less than 200,000, probably between 1 and 200,000. So you take Uniqlo, the CEO of Uniqlo gets paid 3.6 million US dollars, and yet they're so desperate for tech talent, and specifically machine learning and AI talent, that they have just recently authorized paying salaries of up to $8.8 million for people with IT, machine learning, skills, to ensure that they hire them so that they don't lose out from a competition perspective. This is how desperate Japanese companies are. NTT data announced as well that they were willing to offer $1 million plus salaries for people, for engineers with who are highly skilled in machine learning and AI, which is revolutionary in Japan. I mean, these are salaries which would be far and away higher than what the CEOs and execs are getting at these companies. And I do remember being an IT engineer in my first job and having no IT background whatsoever, like most of my co-hires. And yet I also remember the year ahead of me, there was a computer science MIT graduate who was hired into the same job as me somehow. And he was like someone who should be getting one of those kinds of salaries. And he was being basically forced to do the same menial work that I was made to do. And he was complaining about it. And apparently when he said to HR, why are you giving me these sort of menial jobs when I have a computer science degree from MIT? And he, and apparently HR, I remember the HR at this multinational Japanese IT company said directly to him as a response, yeah, but what you do at university doesn't really matter anyway, does it? It's really what you learn when you start doing the job. And that's the mentality. That's why Japan has fallen behind on this, because actually that stuff that you learn at those universities actually means something. And Japanese universities don't rank well internationally. They have some good specialist scientific research stuff, but it's a 4-year vacation still for a lot of kids. It's different now to what it was a few years ago, but it still is. It's not, people don't come out as primed or as trained as they come out in other countries. And this is where they're losing the benefit. They're not training people in the right way, and there's this desperate labor shortage. So, yeah, they are trying to get 50,000 skilled professionals, and they're willing to pay them $8 million, but the government isn't going to let any of them in, and it's not even sure. It doesn't even have any criteria for when it's going to let them in. So really, really kind of punching itself in the face really hard at the moment. I mean, these are not hard dots to connect, yet, this is what's happening in Japan at the moment. The dots are not being connected. Capitalism at its best. Well, that's supply and demand, and yes, this is the problem as well. I guess Japan isn't really a full supply and demand kind of a country. Just for an idea of, again, how messed up things are in Japan. Quentin Rankid, what about graduate school in Japan? Serious studies or like undergrad? I'm talking about undergrad primarily. Postgrad, you do tend to have people who study seriously. And actually for fields that require genuine specialist knowledge, they almost all require LLM, for law LLMs, but, master's degrees. So, postgrad, there are serious studies, but for the majority of people who are just going through to get the certificate to go work at the bank or whatever, they'll take some, global economics and finger painting studies and whatnot and come out. And just for an idea, again, although the government is now really trying to pressure companies to increase wages, like for the first time in 30 years, the number of people, the NHK did a survey of people whether they expect their incomes to go up in the next 12 months, and 1% of people said yes by a lot, 14% of people said a little bit, 58% of people said not really, wait a minute, so I read this wrong, let me start again. 1% said it'll go up a lot, 20% said that it'll go up somewhat, 58% thinks it won't go up very much, basically no, 14% say it won't go up at all. Basically, all the blue bits people do not have any hope of their wages going up meaningfully, and that's been the same situation for 30 years now. And also interestingly, the chart below it, they asked people how do they see Japan's relations with China, and this year's the 50th anniversary from 1972 when Japan established diplomatic relations with the People's Republic of China when they switched from Taiwan Republic of China. 62% of people think there won't be any change, 24% of people think it'll get worse, and 5% of people think it'll get better. So, some interesting polls there, but people not very expectant for the future. I have an eye on time, so I'm going to move on, although I do see comments there. Magpie882, there's at least one recruiter dangling $14 million for machine learning engineer at Uniqlo. Oh, well, there you go. They should ask for more now. They can say, what happened to that yesterday? Nikkei announced $8.8 million. Maybe somebody got a little bit too confident. Although 14 million, I assume you mean Japanese yen, and that's pretty good. I mean, for Japanese companies, that's consistent with what I've heard NTT Data is offering machine learning engineers as well. which is why I'll tell anyone who listens, actually, if you are, going into any kind of professional training at the moment, if you're in university or about to go to university and you want a job that's going to maybe allow you to do something more than teach English in Japan, for example. Nothing wrong with teaching English, of course, but if you want a professional skill that's going to travel well, anything cloud, machine learning and AI related, if you can get any certification in that right now, even as a side gig to whatever else you're studying, even if philosophy student, you'd be surprised how coding is actually can be connected to things like philosophy. Actually, that's the construction of logic. Right now, yeah, that's a great, you have the best wage earning opportunities as well as the best opportunities to come to Japan. There's a crazy shortage of those jobs. I do highly recommend it. Yeah. Eric Bailey, generally speaking, human resources, it is where the short bus will eventually take you to. I'm not sure exactly what you mean there, but yeah. 4-year degree in finger painting. That's a good degree. I mean, by the way, I do think when the robots take all the jobs that can be automated, finger painting may become the only thing of value left that people can do. So I would hold on to that degree. I'd frame it and put it on the wall, because I think Uniqlo may be paying you $8 million in a few years. Only half joking. Japan civil service jobs, they have lots of rules that you're not allowed to receive external sources of income for conflict of interest reasons and whatnot, although the rules are a little bit outdated. It's this idea that you're not supposed to have a side business because, of course, if you're a government official, you could get favors to help with that. However, two prominent cases, there's a case a year ago where a government, like a city employee from a city, like traveled the country, had a blog where he featured bentos from all over Japan, which strikes me as the sort of job which I'd expect a bureaucrat, the sort of hobby that I expect a bureaucrat to sort of have. But apparently he monetized ads on the blog and got like $100 from it, and was fired from being a city employee for having this blog. I really don't think they understand the proper meaning of having a side gig. This fire sergeant apparently had a gaming live stream, so a firefighter who had an internet channel which had live streaming playing games. Did pretty well by the looks of it, did get millions of views and whatnot, ended up getting $10,000 income, which is pretty good for how YouTube goes, although still doesn't really constitute a full-time job at all. But is actually going to have a pay cut equivalent to the amount that was earned, and is going to be suspended again for violating the employment rules. This is a sign again. I think Japan should sort of get with the times a little bit on this and maybe recognize the difference between a genuine, and I realize it's very blurred, the difference between a genuine side gig and engaging in a hobby that possibly is actually beneficial for what they're trying to do. But yes, YouTube is getting punished. And this was another case, the classic old case of disgruntled person on the internet trying to find out how to identify the person and then contact their employer and, try to get them fired or punished, and succeeding. A troll winning. That's basically what this was. So pretty awful, actually. But again, it's a good reminder to be careful with that sort of thing. Finger painting. I do believe it's the job of the future. The robots, they don't have fingers like ours. That's what, I guess they'll probably figure that one out too. But we have the advantage for now. Interesting point. This year the law is changing where the age of majority in Japan is switching from 20 years old to 18 years old. It has various implications. There has been a crazy situation in Japan where you are basically a child until you are 20, in terms of you are not allowed to you cannot legally make a contract, which means that you can't have a credit card. You can't get a video store membership. You can't get a loan. So it's kind of funny. There are so many people, the mandatory education only goes up to the end of junior high school. So you can be living on your own from 16, yet you can't form a contract with anyone until you're 20. It does protect a lot of 18-year-olds, for example, from loan sharks, and they can sort of get out of those contracts and whatever. And this is again why those companies try to screen and prevent lending to young people. But at the same time, that's basically they're treated as minors. The drinking age and smoking age will remain 20, but pretty much everything else By the way, the age of consent for sex in Japan, since I'm sure some people are thinking of that, as I understand, it's kind of vague. I think it's treated as 18 years old for boys, and it's really, really vague for women. It should just be a flat 18. But I think it varies. And this has, caused various problems inside and outside for Japan. But yeah, most other things like being able to make a contract, the big difference is criminal responsibility as well as also dropping from 20 to 18. I do think most countries use 18, and to me it's silly that a 19-year-old anywhere cannot have a job or make a contract or be criminally liable as an adult. There are people, even Japanese people, who say that, well, Japanese people are so sheltered and, so coddled, and they really are less mature than people overseas. Japanese people say this themselves, but I think it's partly because society treats them that way that they become like that. Japanese people are people. The people will be self-resilient if you allow them to be self-resilient, and they should be, so the government's making a big fuss about that. As a result, the coming-of-age day ceremonies, of course, now are applying to 20-year-olds, as well as, applying now to 18-year-olds, not just 20-year-olds. Oh, in fact, I thought there was a list in here of the, here we go. In fact, this is on video, but yeah, the sorts of things. So they're first of all, for the municipalities that are trying to do the switch, there is the problem about with the entrance exam season happening at the same time. Right now is the worst time to do it for 18-year-olds. So, for example, they are keeping the coming of age day ceremony on the traditional January 10th date for 20-year-olds, but they are doing it in May for 18-year-olds, so it's after the exam seasons. But yeah, basically contracting credit cards and whatnot. So yeah, they'll get to be full adults anyway. Yeah, only a couple of stories left now. In fact, mostly about videos. So I will rush through the final ones. Cultural Uncanny Valley, this channel. And you know what? It's like called Cool History Bros. You can see at the top there. I'm going to go back before it starts playing. Another channel I highly recommend. They are not Japanese. They seem to be Chinese guys who comment on Northeast Asia, so Korea, China, Japanese, Taiwanese, pop culture, anime, video game culture, but they tie it to traditional Buddhist, Confucian, those sort of cultural history and the influences in pop culture. And they feature a lot of Japanese culture in this as well, particularly in games. And they did a really great video on cultural Uncanny Valley and how some movies, for example, like Mulan, for example, lots of examples where they succeed and where they don't succeed, but where they're trying to where you've got a movie that's from America and they're trying to sell it in China, appealing to Chinese people by making it look Chinese, but to the Chinese people, or vice versa, Chinese people trying to sell movies to appeal to Americans. And they point out, you either nail it and do it really well and it's credible and you succeed, that's the ideal, or sometimes you'll do it so comically badly it will be entertaining in itself, and that will kind of in its own way be okay. But there is this kind of thing which happens, it's like people talk about how with robots, people will be happy with robots that don't look like people at all, and they may be okay with a robot that's completely convincing, that beats the Turing test. But there's an uncanny valley point in the middle where computers kind of disconcertingly like a person but a little bit off, and then people get really put off by that. And this happens in pop culture. They talk about examples of movies going both ways, made in China to appeal in America and made in America to appeal in China, that miss because actually they are close. They're close enough that it becomes kind of, rather than looking like just a corny ripoff, it actually just looks like just a really weird and disconcerting close thing. They show some great examples of movies and games that sort of fell victim to this. They talk about how Kung Fu Panda was successful, very successful in China. It was because the characters were animated animals. They weren't people. They thought that was a big help. They also pointed out, they talked about the example of Great Wall, the movie, which I must admit, I myself have this image of being a Matt Damon saves China white savior movie that apparently flopped in China and flopped in America. And they commented, I didn't realize this. I thought that was a Hollywood movie intended to sell in China, where they still put Matt Damon in as the star, and it flopped everywhere because it looked like another horrible case of a famous white Hollywood actor saving a different culture from themselves. Turns out that was actually no. Great Wall was a Chinese production featuring some Chinese megastars, Chinese producer, Chinese director. They wanted to make a movie that would appeal in America, and they got Matt Damon. Matt Damon was the token foreigner. He was basically the the rush hour, Asian sidekick in reverse that they put in the movie, thinking that if they put Matt Damon in the movie, it'll encourage Americans to want to watch a Chinese movie. But everyone thought, oh no, this is an American studio doing White Savior again. And it flopped in both countries. So it's a great thing. And the other thought that I had watching it's a great long talk piece, but it also made me realize this really happens when you are learning Japanese. This is quite a deep point, so I'm going to make it very succinctly. But there is a curve that you go through learning Japanese where when you speak Japanese badly, everyone will compliment you all the time at how great your Japanese is. Nihongo o jouzu desu ne. Like, everyone will want to be a friend. Everyone will want to have that fun, thing of trying to figure out how to communicate with you and practice their English and take you out and all of that. But there is certainly something most people who are fluent in Japanese go through at about late in the first year in Japan when they start getting really good. That you'll fall into this gap where you are good enough that they no longer give you the gaijin pass anymore, but you're not good enough. You're like a really, really terrible. It's basically what happens with these movies. You go from being a good foreigner to being a really terrible Japanese person. And I realized my struggle from the end of my first year in Japan to the end of my third year was to go from being it went from being a rock star foreigner to being a terrible Japanese person to being an average Japanese person after a few years. That was what the struggle was. And that uncanny valley where there was this huge drop off where all of a sudden work became tougher and relationships became tougher and everything. And people would be nicer to people who were less good at Japanese than me, because I was stuck in this weird space where instead of treating me as a talented foreigner, they treated me as a slightly, incompetent Japanese person. And that's what happens with these movies. And if you're living in Japan, you'll probably experience this in some way. A lot of people who are cross-cultural as well definitely fall into this. If you have Japanese parents, you'll fall in this zone where Japanese will think, well, no point praising you. Your parents are Japanese. What's wrong with you? People with Japanese heritage, people of mixed Japanese background, Japanese who grew up abroad fall into this, where they come back to Japan. They're fully Japanese, but they act a little bit different. They sound a little bit different. They've got, Western sort of values and so on, and it throws everybody off, and they get really harshly treated in Japan. It's the uncanny valley thing. It's that you're not quite fitting in. I've definitely been through it. I think anyone who's been in Japan for any meaningful time will have experienced it. I love the thought piece. Just right now, Kishida, the government's crushing it, 41%, now beating none of the above on 34%. And the Democrats have actually fallen behind the Osaka First and Give Everybody a Universal Income Party. I mean, they're both hovering around 5%. So that's the government. This is me reacting to the Expanse being over. Last episode yesterday, no spoilers, but it was great. The whole series is great. I love The Expanse. I know that it's ending because their contract with Amazon was for 3 seasons. I'm hoping that either they extend it or that Netflix or someone else picks them up and lets them either do a spin-off or do more seasons, because there's plenty of directions it can still go. Not perfect, but certainly one of the best science fiction. To me, it's like Battlestar Galactica, where the world building is better and the story writing quality is more consistent through the whole thing. And I mean the new Battlestar Galactica, like really great. So I don't know what I'm going to do with my Fridays now. Also, I've mentioned before how great Toy Galaxy is. There's another great thing. This is like a 70s line of, Shogun Warriors, which are another case of 1970s Japanese sort of action figures and cartoons being Americanized and sold. How it set up the model for importing Japanese toys and TV shows into America and selling them as American programs, which is what I grew up with. And I just find that really cool as pop culture history. So I love doing that anyway. So that's all the topics for tonight. I'm actually probably, given that I started 10 minutes late, I'm actually within time, but I always try to aim to finish around this time. Hope everybody is, Roomba is in cohorts with HR. Yes, definitely. Anyway, great to see you all. Nick, checking in from New England. Wow, cool to have someone from New England. Welcome, Nick. Good to have you in the comments. Good to have everyone in the comments, by the way. I'm going to do a final sweep through. If you've got any final comments, lowered expectations. I think of that song often. The J Vlog. Good to see you in the chat. And yeah, that's from the age when Saturday Night Live was sort of dropping off a little bit, but the lowered expectations skit I did like. AV84K. Have I watched Firefly? I have not. But maybe I should. In fact, is that a movie? I'm just thinking. They have to. I don't know if it's available in Japan. I've got Disney, Netflix, and Amazon that I watch on. I don't have Hulu, so I don't know if maybe it's on a service I can't watch here. But yeah. Rainbow, late but present. Good to see you, Rainbow. Glad that you made it. By the way, now I realize the name. Very cleverly done. Good to see you in here. Good to see everybody in here. Glad I got the J Vlog. Eric Bailey, good to see. Indeed, salutations to the J Vlog. Magpie882, what about the 19-year-olds? Do we just ignore them? Did they stop aging? No, so at the moment they're doing a catch-up where they're doing coming-of-age ceremonies this year for 18 and 19-year-olds on different days. So they're like accelerating it, and from next year it'll be all 18-year-olds. So they haven't forgotten them, but yes, they do fall in that unfortunate gap in the middle. Oh, he streamed. Ben Duncan knows about the firefighter who got the pay cut. He streamed Firefighter Simulator. Oh, I see. He got fired because he was so bad at the game. Well, that would be reasonable. I must admit. I mean, you think about Air Force pilots that are basically now not flying planes anymore. They're just flying drones. Maybe if they're terrible at ace combat, they should also get pay cuts. Who knows? Just scanning through. Yeah, I think I addressed most of the comments earlier. Anyway, great to see everybody. Sorry for the technical trouble at the beginning. Hope you like the new camera setup. I'll check about the audio syncing and make sure it works. I do like the iPhone setup as well. It's a pretty good solution. As you can see, this is a better solution. I mean, now it looks super red just switching like that. This is a better solution than the webcam. I mean, the webcam just looks like garbage, right? So I think I'm going to stick with this. This is obviously better. But do check out Anton Petrov, by the way. I do love the channel. I got the t-shirt, so it's one of the many channels I do enjoy watching. Hope everybody as well. Again, the Rona is getting worse in Japan. Good to see in the US and some places the numbers do seem to be dropping off in places like New York. So, it's not, maybe it's not without end. I never understood actually how these things turn around. But no question, it is still on the up and up in Japan, and we're just going to have to ride this one out a little bit longer. But, stay safe wherever you are. Djokovic got deported. Well, that's, I was joking, but I wasn't really joking. It's a case, the Australian government versus an anti-vaxxer rich tennis player. It's kind of like a fight where you want both to lose, and then both do lose. It's like awesome. It's like both of them come out of it looking terrible. So yeah, what a mess. I have no sympathy for him at all. Actually, I mean, he got if they gave him an exemption to come in, and the idea of the government just politically overriding that, which is how it looked in the beginning, fine. That's the Australian government just being stupid. So originally, I thought, yeah, if they let him in, if they gave him an exemption, that's fine. But then when it turns out, even for the exemption stuff, he still lied. Yeah, that was what a debacle, and there are much more important things that are happening in the world. So anyway, I thought that was interesting. But I think I've caught everybody. I hope you all have a great week. Do take care. I will see you all later. If you're bad at ace combat, it's not as bad. Since it's not as realistic. Well, sure. Amazon Prime. Okay, Firefly. Thank you for the tip. I will check it out. Sergeant Bilko, have a good week. Remember, like if you like. It does help. I'm not monetizing. I'm just doing this purely for likes. So please, throw me a peanut with the likes. Have a good week. Stay safe. At the new camera. Peace. Look at that. My fingers aren't totally blurry. They're just blurry because of depth of field with a nice lens. So there you go. Have a good week, everybody. Peace. Didn't he have Rona, so he has immunity? Well, yeah, but people do catch it multiple times. And I don't know. I don't care. It's just the rules, right? Anyway, have a good week. I'm going to sign out there. See you later. Peace.